Where was I? Well, 9 months fly by, don't they? And just like some other things that take 9 months, consider this a birth, a rebirth, if you will, of the channel. Will it be a stillbirth? You tell me. We'll see how it goes. So we won't go into much in terms of future plans, why I've been away. We'll do that at the end of the month, in terms of what's happening. And there's no great story to it anyway. I haven't been at sea fighting pirates. Well, not for the whole 9 months anyway. But essentially just a lack of inspiration and an unwillingness to do this just for the sake of doing it, kind of thing. So, you may have seen from the updates on the tabs or other social media that we're going to be doing a follow-up to last year's HaMerWeen, where we looked at 31 Hammer films over 31 days. This year, we're doing HaLEEween. So we won't be looking at any Hammer this month, a kind of twist on it. So it's HalLEEween, so we'll be looking at Christopher Lee, and we'll be looking at 31 films of his. But the twist on it is we're not going to be looking at any Hammer, Dracula, Frankenstein, or not. And we're not going to be looking at any Star Wars, any Lord of the Rings, or any Bond, or any Wicker Man for that. So, I've probably picked the wallpaper quite poorly, really, haven't I? But still, it's quite hard to find wallpaper that I liked. So, with that in mind, we're going to be doing these in stints. So rather than do 31 videos this time, I'm going to be doing maybe over 5 or 6 videos, and we'll give you chunks like that for a couple of reasons. Number one, last year you may remember a throat infection nearly killed me in the second week, where I had to croak my reviews out, tapping them using Morse code and whatnot. Did not go well. So if something like that happens again, I shouldn't like to have to revert to that. But also, I want to dig very deep, almost disgracefully deep, into Christopher Lee's filmography here. And to do that, I think quite a few of these films will lose people, because he's barely in some of them, and other ones are in genres that you don't associate with them. So if I put them at the kind of addendum of a video, it's easier, therefore, for you to, oh, and also this happened, because, consider it they're the spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go. No, that analogy doesn't work at all. Anyway, what we're going to do essentially is we're going to look at some bigger horror films that it was in that just aren't that big. And then a couple of anomalies each time as well. And if you've seen the title card for this video on the thumbnail, there's certainly a few anomalies. We'll start then in 1970. We'll dedicate this to my good buddy Sam, as it's directed by his friend and nobody else's, Jess Franco. 1970s, The Bloody Judge. Couple of editions here. The Bloody Judge from 88 Films in this edition, and from Germany in this edition, the Witchfinder of Blackmoor. I think that translates as, given my pigeon German. It was released in America as Night of the Blood Monster. Now, you look at that, nothing like that ever happens in this film. It is a pretty historical film with just a couple of kind of BDSM elements. Nothing like this ever happens or is even hinted at. That, my friends, is AIP Pictures. Just add a monster on the cover. People won't care. We've got their money. By the time they complain, we've got the money. Who cares? 1685, Judge Jeffries is in court, holding court and sentencing anybody he doesn't like to death. And there's a rather wonderful sequence in the film where he does just that. You, what's your name? Guilty. Off you pop. You, guilty. Which? Off you pop. And essentially, this is a time of, well, in real life, it kind of isn't, to be honest. I mean, a lot of people were sentenced to death, but moreover, Protestantism versus Catholicism rather than witchcraft at this point. But anyway, regardless, for this film's universe, it's all over witchcraft. And 1685 sees the Monmouth Rebellion, if I remember my history, which leads up to William of Orange comes over in 1688 and becomes king, even though he had no actual birthright to be king. He's literally invited over to become king and ends the reign of the Stuarts. Right? So blah 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 blah. And that's where this film is set. So in the last bloody years of the Stuarts, where persecution for religious reasons is going on. But again, in this film's case, it's really just persecution because Jeffreys is a prick. So Judge Jeffreys uses sadism and masochism. Again, there's a Jess Franco film, can you believe it? Sadism and masochism to get his way. So some people, some young wenches, who are rather buxom and are seen in their full glory in these uncut versions, um, they are invited to his bedchamber of an evening and may not be sentenced to death, but they seem to all be sentenced to death anyway, so it makes much of muchness. The plot of the film really is terribly simple. A young girl gets sentenced to death. Her sister hooks up with a guy whose father is a lord, a landed gentry, and the guy that she's hooked up with is pursued as a rebel by the incumbent king, and Judge Jeffreys sentences the boy to death. So it all comes kind of full circle, and come to my chamber and I might let the boy live kind of thing. There isn't a lot of, there's not a lot of story to get in the way of the nudity, put it that way. However, that's really all the plot you need for this film to be, again, ain't a lot of plot to get in the way of some of the film's assets, which they really want you here for, and some of the other assets are on display as well. It's one of those kind of films. Um, However, I don't want you to think this is just that kind of exploitation film, although it absolutely is. It's more than because Jess Franco has a budget on his side. So in this case, he's able to have great costumes, great settings. This was filmed in Germany and Portugal. It's produced by Harry Alan Towers, who did the Fu Manchu films with them, so it has that kind of sumptuous look that was affordable at the time. Soon wouldn't be when all involved were forced back into the B movie bishes and would never see budgets like these again. But it does have a very sumptuous and luscious atmosphere. And even some of the nudity is quite charming in a kind of Renaissance fashion. However, there are parts where the film reverts to German, and that's almost shorthand for these are the European parts that were added just so we could get some nudity in here. There's a part where Judge Jeffreys does indeed seduce a woman, say, if you come to my chambers and blah blah blah. But the German version has the scene of them in the chambers. Notably, you do not see Christopher Lee's face once in that. Why? Because Christopher Lee didn't film pretty much a rape scene. He just didn't film it. They added it in after his involvement. Christopher Lee never saw the final film. He maintained a friendship with Franco for years, but did not see the final film, according to him on the extras anyway. So there is a lot of exploitation here, but according to Franco, it was added at the behest of various producers. The film was paid for kind of hodgepodge, taking a bit from Germany, a bit from the UK, a bit from France, a bit from Spain, a bit from Portugal. And all of them had kind of different ideas. So at various points, okay, it's a historical. Okay, it's a horror. Okay, it's a historical with horror elements. Okay, it's a horror with historical elements. Okay, we need to add in some serious nudity. Okay, we need to tone down the nudity for this territory. Okay, we need to really up the nudity for this territory. Probably the Germans. They're into some weird stuff. We've all seen the videos. We've all seen the videos. So for a change, I really don't blame Franco for anything that's gone on here. I think he's having to be a master to too many servants, and his ultimate vision for what this film could have been is probably lost somewhere in the shuffle and results in a solid, and quite spectacular film in places that hints at a much more spectacular film. Now, for Christopher Lee's involvement, he put a lot of research into Judge Jeffries, and he brings out, although he's obviously having to do the Matthew Hopkins Witchfinder General thing, he does bring a dignity to the character, and he also brings a kind of knowingness and a melancholy, where at one point he's accused of, if you ever saw what goes on at your hangings and your burnings, you'd think twice about what you do. And instead of just having Jeffries go like, bah, Christopher Lee gives a kind of look as if to say, yeah, maybe I would. Maybe I would. Oh well. And then kind of moves on from it. But just the decision from Chris Lee to take that moment to give the look, to hint that, yeah, maybe what I'm doing isn't right. That decision alone justifies 100% his casting. He's brilliant, he's mercurial at points, he's dark, he's brooding, he's intense. He's also a believable judge if this was a much more straight historical. He's believable in a much more straight fashion. And again, I don't blame him at all for some of the more salacious parts that were added, that are just a little bit beyond the pale, where it goes from kind of fun exploitation, and we all expect this from old movies, don't we? Ha ha ha, to actually this is just getting a bit too sleazy for my tastes here, my rather Puritan tastes, which normally I don't have, but knowing that Christopher Lee didn't even know they happened, I don't like that. I don't like when an actor has actions thrust upon him that he didn't agree to at all. But tis what tis. So, do I recommend A Bloody Judge? Only if you like the sound of what you've heard. If you want a bit of titillation, I really don't think you should get it here because the women uh, were not really given much of a choice in story or out of story in some places, according to the extras. So, yeah, maybe look elsewhere. However, one treat that I can also offer, and again, I've got two versions. uh, Curse of the Crimson Altar. Yeah, and here's the 88 films, Curse of the Crimson Altar, with Boris Karloff and Christopher Lee from 1968. Wonderful stuff. This is, if you're the kind of person who's only seen the Hammer things or just seen a few Hammer things, and you want to jump a little deeper into that kind of well, here you go. Or if you like old Dark House films, here you go. So the story, again, brief synopsis, and then we'll go into the review, including a little bit of an onus on Christopher Lee's part. The film is about a young man played by Mark Eden, Marco Polo from Doctor Who's fourth ever serial. Yep, fourth. And he goes to investigate this old dark house where his brother has gone missing recently. He received correspondence with the address from this house, so he knows his brother has been there. Goes to investigate, and he meets an odd bunch there. When he meets the young woman of the house who lives there with her uncle, the uncle played by Christopher Lee, he says, "Yes, this is an old dark house, the kind of which you'd expect Boris Karloff to jump out at you on." About 10 minutes later, Karloff jumps out at him. That's the kind of meta jokes that I like in a movie. So they may have written it before they got Karloff, but I love that they didn't change it to Bela Lugosi. Oh, maybe Boris would have kicked up, but they didn't change it to Lon Chaney or something. They kept it, even though the actual Boris Karloff was about to come on screen at that point. I love that so much. That is fantastic stuff. So directed by Vernon Sewell. And when young Robert Manning goes to look for his brother, again, he finds this strange bunch, the kind that you always find at an old dark house. So when he gets there, he finds the Morleys. Eve Morley, portrayed by Virginia Wetherell, the great Virginia Wetherell, married to Ralph Bates, star of Many's, a classic that we talked about last year. Christopher Lee as the uncle, but also finds Michael Goff as Elder, who's the kind of butler with an odd side to him. And he has Mark Eden, when he goes to bed at night, when he stays in this mansion, as he's invited to do, as his brother is nowhere to be found, but please, why won't you make yourself at home and stay here for a few nights? He has visions every night, nightmares, where he sees another Morley, played by Barbara Steele, a horror icon herself. So lots of strange characters, strange visions of other characters, and then other characters come into it, of course, the local vicar played by May Gray, Rupert Davies, and all sorts of side characters. So I won't go into too much. But it essentially invites us to wonder what happened to the brother? Is he dead? If he is dead, then why? And if he isn't dead, then why? But also, who's responsible for it? Because although we get a couple of kind of very well shot, strange, um, uh, kaleidoscopic flashbacks or dreams, perhaps, we don't know what they are at first. Although we get a couple of those images, we're not sure how much we can trust them because we don't know what they are, if they are flashbacks or flash forwards, or we don't know. So or are they people being hypnotized perhaps and they actually did happen, it's just the fuzzy memory of what happened in the middle of the night, who knows? Well, you will if you watch the movie. And we're invited to kind of, without being too broad as a whodunit, we're invited to essentially guess as to who the evil people are. Is it Christopher Lee as the uncle of the house who's a bit too eager to have a house guest stay over for a few days? Is it Virginia Wetherell, who's a bit too eager to have him into bed and too eager to help him? Is it the vicar, who, he's a vicar, so he's probably up to something dodgy? Is it Boris Karloff, who's the local professor who seems to stop by a little too often for a guy in a wheelchair? So we're kind of given various, or is it Michael Goff? Is it the strange butler who's got some strange affectations and seems to be trying to tell Mark Eden a few things but can't quite communicate them? Who is it? Again, you'll know when you watch the film. So that's as far as I'm going to go with plot synopsis. This is wonderful. It's a fantastic film that I've seen many, many times, and again, so highly recommended for people who want something more in this kind of Hammer-ish guise. So this isn't a Hammer film; it's a Tygon film. But if you want something from Tony Tenser, who was one to copy Hammer quite blatantly, if you want maybe his most successful attempt to copy Hammer, other than one we might go into at another point, not this month, but soon, then certainly look no further. This is a fantastic film, very loosely based on H.P. Lovecraft's The Dreams in the Witch House, but so loosely based as to almost not have to mention, really. Yeah, just a terrific, wonderful film with some great cinematography from John Killian. It's well directed. It's well scripted by Mervyn Haseman and Henry Lincoln, who did some Doctor Who's as well back in the 60s. The Abominable Snowmen, The Web of Fear, The Dominators. And it's just a fantastic, wonderful little film. Christopher Lee's involvement as the onus of this month is on him. He's terrific. He gets to play the very dignified uncle who's very loose, and although he's quite, stentorial himself, sits in the chamber and has a sherry and sits by the fire and reads a book, he does allow his niece to have pretty much an orgy next door, which, hey, I can get behind that. The old dark house with orgies going on. That's a bit more exciting than just your normal old dark house, isn't it? And hey, good on him. So is he responsible for the shenanigans going on? You'll need to watch and find out. But again, the highest recommendation. Now we'll be more brief on the next ones, believe me, because we have some odd things going on. You've probably heard of the popular Marvel Comics character, Captain America. He's had some successful films in the past. None of them are in this box set of the Captain America triple bill. Believe me, this is not the Marvel cinematic doodads. This is Captain America 1 and 2 from 1979, and then the one starring J.D. Salinger's son from 1990. And the one we're concerned with is Captain America 2, for, Death Too Soon. It's called Death Too Soon from 1979, because Christopher Lee's the villain in it. He's Miguel. Oh boy, this is so in the vein of like the Incredible Hulk from '77 with Bill Bixby or something. Captain America's running around and not staying in one place for too long, and he's sort of kind of on the run from the government. It seems. I've not seen number one. Don't hold that against me. I only got this for Christopher Lee's involvement. But I have seen that, oddly, the 1991. And he stumbled onto a plot from Miguel, Christopher Lee, to unleash a virus into the population, which will age people at the rate of is it 30 times, something like that. Anyway, people age a lot faster, and depending on the dilution, you can age to death in a matter of minutes. So the he's already done it to one town. Was it Philadelphia? I don't know. Syracuse? I don't know. They're all the same to me. They're all the same to me. Anyway, Scranton. He's already done it to one town to prove he can do it with a lower dose. And now that the government have seen that, yes, indeed, this dosage is aging people too fast and they're going to die, Captain America has to save the day against the evil Miguel. You don't really need much more of a plot synopsis than that. Captain America in this only seems to be able to do things if he's got his motorbike and including helmet. His little eagle wings are attached to the helmet, and he can't just have the motorbike. Can't just drive around on that. He has to go around in a kind of dodgy van like the A-Team have got and keep the bike in the back of that so he can launch it. He's Captain America. What's he need a dirty old man's van for? Don't know, maybe so he can do handiwork and DIY and things, but geez Louise. I think this is bad even for the time. So I quite like Bill Bixby, Incredible Hulk. I think there's some real great acting from Bixby in that. Lou Ferrigno was a great Hulk. But there was also a really bad Spider-Man show around the same time, where Spider-Man would just fight, local hoodlums and things, and there was never a supervillain to be seen. This is much more like the Spider-Man, where it's so slow and tedious. Luckily, Christopher Lee's here to give it a little bit more charisma. When we cut to him and his scenes, he's at least there to add a little bit of menace, but even he can't do miracles. But he's having a little bit of fun, and he gets to have. There is a fight scene between Captain America and Christopher Lee in the forest, which that happened at least, so we can rest now that we have that on video. So yeah, believe me, for some of these films, that's the kind of depth I'll go into. Not recommended at all, but that's one of our 31. Can you see now why I didn't want to give something like that its own video? Because Christopher Lee's involvement is so minimal that, but again, I just want to show you other sides of his filmography. Mio in the Land of Faraway, based on a book by the woman who wrote the Pippi Longstocking books. Mio in the Land of Faraway, um, starring Timothy Bottoms and Nick Packard from 2.4 Children and Christian Bale in his first ever film. There's this kind of myth that his first ever film was Empire of the Sun with Spielberg. He probably wishes it was, but no, this is actually his first ever film. So this is quite charming in that kind of depressing 80s way. Like Labyrinth and Neverending Story and Return to Oz, those kind of things. This has got that kind of vibe to it, but it's also got that kind of Scandinavian thing going on where, hey, their culture's different, so a lot of the rules are a bit different and their mythology is different, so it just gives it a different vibe. I keep saying the word differently. So Mio, this young boy called, oh, what's his name? Uh, I didn't tell you in the back. His name's like, say it's Steve. Steve lives in Stockholm with his nagging aunt. A very depressing life. And he knows that, his mother died at birth, but his father was never anywhere to be found. But he knows that his father was secretly a very good man. 2 minutes later, he finds a magic apple that transports him via the beard of a magic wizard to the land of Faraway and finds out that his father was actually the king of the land of Faraway and that Mio, as prince, is the greatest man that ever lived. Let's reverse a little bit. So, yes, the film does have that quick, a jarring tone. He very quickly, after being beaten up by bullies in Stockholm, finds out that actually you come from a place called the Land of Faraway, and your father is the king there, and he loves you very much, and he's been missing you since you were born, and he's never seen you since you were a tiny baby. But you're the prince that's been promised, and you must go to the kingdom. And to get there, you have to cling on to the beard of a decapitated wizard who will fly you through space. Yes, this all happens. This wizard's head is about 50 feet tall. Hold on to the beard and it'll fly you through space. Don't worry about oxygen, it doesn't matter. And that will take you to the land of far away to become the prince that was promised. So Mio does that. And he gets there, and his best friend from Earth is also there. But he's now not called whatever he was called, Larry. He's now called Yum Yum, and is played by Christian Bale. So why he's there, no idea. But Yum Yum and Mio have this rollicking life where they get to play in the gardens of the king and have a wonderful time. But then Mio finds out there's also a dark wizard. Can you guess who Christopher Lee plays in this film? Who must be conquered for the prophecy to last forever. So Mio, Christian Bale, and the horse set off to find and kill the Dark Wizard. It sounds like there's a lot happening in this, but this all happens in the space of about 3 minutes. It goes from the starting credits to, you know, wizard, giant head, beard, hang on, you're the king, you're the prince that was promised. Have to go and kill the evil wizard. 3 minutes. So they set off on their adventure. They go find the wizard. No surprise, it's Christopher Lee, and he is indeed conquered. The end. The synopsis takes about 60 seconds, but to understand it will take 60 years. This is a very odd film. This is an extremely odd film, but I really enjoyed it. Christopher Lee is clearly relishing playing a part that gives him a little bit more mythology to play with. A lot of the words almost feel like they've come straight from the mythology, where he's speaking in a very clipped and very, well, that doesn't have any kind of syntax that makes sense fashion, but it almost feels like they've been translated straight from some epic that we're not aware of, not quite Beowulf, but something like that. And he's the wizard with the dark heart of stone who must be conquered. And he has lines like, "My dark heart of stone cannot be crushed, or it will crush the bones of the likes of you." And it's like, what? Okay, just roll with it. He's got great costumes. Christopher Lee looks the part. He's dressed a bit like Christopher Guest in The Princess Bride. He's not in it for long at all, again, which is why we're just tossing this one in as one of the 31. But this is a bag of fun. And again, if you like Labyrinth, if you like those kind of 80s dark fantasies, this one isn't quite as dark, but it's just weird. It's just weird. And then the addition of Christian Bale and Christopher Lee, certainly. I mean, yeah, check it out just to see. And then lastly for this week, the third of our kind of Christopher Lee was in that is Chuck Norris's film Eye for an Eye or An Eye for an Eye, lest I get the name of a Chuck Norris film wrong. Hmm, what an odd one. So it's do I really need to go into it? Very simply, Chuck Norris and his partner witness a drug deal that they've been monitoring. It goes wrong. His partner's killed. Chuck Norris quits the force because he doesn't think his superior, played by Shaft himself, Richard Roundtree, is taking it very serious. And Chuck Norris swears that he'll go on a trail of revenge and work his way up to find out who the kingpin is, and he'll kill 500 other people to do so. Um, he does. The end. No, it's a tiny bit more involved than that, but not much. It really is just one of those kind of movies where Chuck Norris does kill 1,000 people and works his way up to find the Kingpin. Of course, the Kingpin in this is played by Christopher Lee. I mean, is there an element of whodunit to it? Potentially. But Christopher Lee is introduced as so Chuck Norris is friends with a news reporter who gets killed, and there's another impetus for him to work his way up and find out who the Kingpin is. And the news reporter's boss is played by Christopher Lee for about 20 seconds. Now, maybe in 1981, for an audience who didn't, in America, automatically remember the Hammer movies, maybe that could be considered a bit of a spoiler. But for us, we're sitting there going, well, Christopher Lee's not going to be in this for 20 seconds to be through a pane of glass as a TV producer, is he? For God's sake, he's clearly going to be the big bad guy. And so it proves he is indeed the guy who's brought the triads over to America and has a big drug deal with them. And you know, honestly, this is so middle of the road. So, but I spoke to my friend Alan, who loves Chuck Norris and loves this kind of bad B movie shtick, and he reckons this is one of his best. To which I say, what the hell is his worst then? This is just such a load of nothing. Christopher Lee's character, I mean, when he's revealed as the Kingpin, and it's supposed to be some kind of twist, I'm thinking, but even in the universe, so even if why, even if we outside the universe go, well, it's Christopher Lee, of course he's going to be the bad guy. In universe, why has a big drug kingpin bothered to still keep working day to day at a local San Francisco news station? What, just in case this international drug kingpin shtick doesn't quite bear out, or just as a hobby? Well, I'll keep my I'll just make sure that I'm still up to date on the developments in local news reporting in San Francisco, just in case. There's loads of other actors in this that you will know from various things. Macau's in this from the Sand Pebbles, and loads of actors you'll know from Kung Fu movies, and you know from other B movies and whatnot. Professor Tanaka's in here, but there's all sorts of cliches, and those cliches are probably why the people that like that kind of thing like it in the first place. But for me, I was just sitting there thinking, why is Christopher Lee not in this more? But when he is, what I like about it is that he plays the drug kingpin very much the same as the TV producer. By which I mean, when we see him as the TV producer, he's just a slick 80s professional guy. And when he's the drug kingpin, he's a slick 80s professional guy. He isn't twirling a mustache going, I got away with it. He's just saying, well, I think we should congratulate ourselves on a job well done, team. We've all done really good work, and we should, thank each other and congratulate ourselves for this monumental achievement, not in broadcasting, but in international drug smuggling. Congratulations, everybody. I'll take you out. He plays it very much the same, which I really appreciated actually. I thought that was a nice little way to do it, rather than, oh, I've been revealed as the bad guy. Now I shall play it completely differently. So yeah. We'll call it quits on it there, folks. So really, you can now see the kind of pattern, I hope, for what we're going to do this month. Each time I'm going to show you a couple of films that we're really reviewing, and then each time I'm going to show you a few oddball things that you might want to check out that I actually think are worth checking out. A couple of things that you might still want to check out just to see, what Marvel did before, and then a couple of kind of for very early 80s action fans only, I think. So hopefully that gives you a kind of clue as to how we're going to proceed this month. And the last three, again, hopefully will indicate as to why I did not do 31 videos. Does anybody want me to review the whole of Neo in the Land of Faraway? Because I don't think I'd be able to do that without having a nervous breakdown. It's so bloody weird. And I couldn't review the whole of Captain America 2 because I just couldn't. Life's too short. Folks, thanks very much. I'll see you 5 or 6 days' time for the next batch. What they'll be, I don't know. But again, some classic horror in there, and then some weird shit. That's all you're promised for every video this month. Some classic Christopher Lee horror that you may not know, and then some weird shit that you almost probably, certainly, definitely, maybe, probably, might not know. Till then, though, my darlings, see you soon.